right now.
Wonderful. Excellent. Having called the meeting to order, Janelle, can you handle roll call, please?
Zashki,
Here.
Bell,
Here.
Gretzmacher,
Here.
Kane,
Here.
and Schmitz.
Here.
And Berto is excused.
Correct. Before we get to a summary of correspondence from Janelle, do we have any comments or concerns from the public on a non-agenda item this evening? Hearing none. Janelle, I'll ask for a summary of correspondence, please.
Okay, there was a letter from Jennifer Dahl, the owner of Firefly Outfitters, concerning issues she has with the fact that feather flags are not allowed in the village. There was also a copy of an article that had been published in the New York Times that's entitled Sustainability Advocates Ask Why Demolish When You Can Deconstruct. And there was also a copy of an article that had been forwarded by Ingrid Johnson. That article was published in the Wall Street Journal, and it was entitled Homeowners Groups Fight Investors Push into Suburbs. And that's all the correspondence there was.
Okay, thank you.
Rob, can I say something? I don't want to risk but I just want to say something, just happens to be at this moment, that it's wonderful that there's people doing things other places, but we live in Wisconsin and we have to follow the laws of Wisconsin. For anybody that might be out there listening.
I agree with you. Okay. So I will, with that, I will motion that we approve the agenda as published.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. I will also motion that we approve the minutes from our last meeting as published.
Second.
Or second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, moving right along, we will start with business item number 1, a discussion regarding and a review of the seating chart and the revised parking plan that were submitted by Tim Radens for the Time Restaurant and Catering 1211 Wine Bar and Provisions, which establishment is located at 10339 State Highway 57. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Plan Commission members will note that we start on page 24 in the packet on this. We had a summary review from Amy, our interim planning and zoning administrator, beginning on page 24. I would begin our discussion by noting a couple things that I found quite striking and appropriate in her summary in terms of her recommendation and what her recommendation to approve would be subject to. On page 24, she notes providing of a copy of any shared parking agreement to the Plan Commission. And I would consider that to be an executed agreement in writing. Essentially what we have in Tim's recent letter is a verbal plan and a written outline. The other thing I would make note of was Amy's third point in her recommendation, subject to parking lot screening and landscaping requirements under section 66.1060 of the code. And that is something that it appears from the submitted materials has yet to be detailed and would need to be done. I'd open up the comments now, further comments to any Plan Commission members, and then Tim as well, if there's anything you would, if you're not asked direct questions by any of the other commission members, if there's anything you'd like to say.
Chair, if I could just interrupt, would you
Sure.
like me to present these items to the commission? I had briefly discussed process with trustee Berto, and she thought that it may be helpful if I, present the item, and I also can screen share to show you the maps and the submittal documents, if that's helpful to the
Oh,
commission.
I think that would be great. I just
Okay.
wondered if anyone had any, I just wanted to double check to see if any commission members had
Sure.
a question or a comment that you might then be able to refer to right away when you
Sure.
take it over.
Sure, absolutely.
And barring none, then we'll just let you take over, Amy.
All right, very good. No questions?
Oh, I think we're good to go for you.
Okay, I'm just gonna try to screen share here, see if I can get this going. Let's see here. Okay, can everybody see the staff report?
Yes.
Okay, and as the chair or acting chair tonight, I guess we could say, as the president has noted the recommendation related to this item for the parking, the seating chart and revised parking plan at 10339 State Trunk 57. The recommendation based on the information provided, approval of the revised parking plan subject to providing a copy of any shared parking agreements to the Plan Commission. In the applicant's submittal, they noted that there was an agreement with the neighboring historical society, and I mentioned that in the staff report as well. We would like to see a copy of that for the record. 2, any additional village approvals and or required permits is part of this process. 3, parking lot screening and landscaping under 66-1060. And then 4, fourth recommendation is any changes to the parking plan shall require approval from the Plan Commission in the future. So if they evaluate things and decide that they want to make some changes, they need more parking, less parking, they'd have to come back for approval in the future. Again, just to show you the location of the site, and this has been at the Plan Commission before, so I think everybody's familiar with the item. And then there's middle. I'll just go through this quickly, try to get the scale right here. Their proposed parking as revised. And that's all I have. The applicant submitted a copy of the code, which you all have. And looks like, I think that's about it on this item. So if there are any other questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ron.
The 2 off-site parking areas are not paved. Does that make a difference?
That is an issue. I brought that issue up to the applicant as well. And in this case, the applicant meets the parking code requirements. So as far as the Sister Bay zoning code is concerned, they don't need to have additional parking or a shared parking agreement. But if they're concerned about larger events they may have and they want to have additional parking and they enter into agreement, that's fine. But yes, it should be unpaved. There is a section in the code that requires parking to be on a paved surface. So I did bring that up and have not had a response to that. So I'm not sure if they're still pursuing the parking. Maybe the applicant's on the meeting and they can address this. But as far as the Plan Commission is concerned and the zoning code is concerned, they meet the parking requirements based on the plan that they submitted.
Well, then why do they need the overflow parking?
That remains to be the question. Exactly. And so maybe the applicant is here or is on this meeting and they can address that question. I think, initially as it was submitted in the submittal, it was for larger events that they wanted to be prepared for that for their customers, that they had enough parking. But yes, the code does require parking on a paved surface. So, and I didn't get a response to that, pointing out that issue from the applicant.
A question of the commission. Do we have any other circumstances like this where the base facility obviously has appropriate parking, but if they have a special event, and I'm trying to remember what the guy brought up, that there have to be overflow, like for instance, CHOP, as I understand it, has enough room downstairs to have a fairly large event but they don't have the parking for it.
Dave, I get the point you're making. I don't think that's a direct correlation because when you're talking about CHOP, you're talking about the ability of that particular business positioned where they are downtown of organizing an event at a date and time when all the street parking may well be open or mostly open to them. So there's not really any corresponding street parking on
Right.
State Highway 57 that, would correspond. To your question about the time, trying to recall what brought up the need for the additional parking in prior discussion, as I recall it, it stemmed from and then initiated with the Chris Kindle Christmas events, and that John Nelson was working with the Time folks as to the possibility of using this additional parking at their location for that event because of a lack of parking at the Historical Society,
Right.
which then, to my recollection, the last time we heard from Tim, included then that, there might be, further use that could be made out of that additional parking leading up to Chris Kindle. That is my recollection. Now, if
Okay.
Tim's on, and calls it differently, I'd welcome to hear from him or just hear from Tim in general at this point. Do we still have Tim? Or perhaps, Amy, he was understanding from your conversation what he still needed to get to
Yes.
us.
Yes.
And so,
Yes, the applicant has been provided the conditions that I
Okay.
included in the staff report.
So should we just table?
yeah, I would say, unless, since those things did not come in and since Tim hasn't gathered them in time to present them tonight, that we just need to table this I would motion that we table this till a future agenda item when, the office, when office staff has received the said materials in time to agenda it.
Yeah, if I could, I would just remind the Plan Commission that this application does meet the parking requirements. So if they want to pursue this additional separate parking, that seems like something they could come back to the Plan Commission for, but I would recommend to the Plan Commission that you move the item, move approval of the item, but put a condition or leave the condition on about submitting the parking, but to hold up the item for that, which,
What
but
would be,
it's up to the Plan Commission.
what would we be approving then, Amy?
The revised parking. You would be approving the revised parking and just the revised parking plan. That's what they've asked for.
But
And
And
But
so
until-
they meet the on-site parking requirements.
well, then why do we have to approve the revised if we don't know? If we haven't seen how they are going to use the property with the Historical Society, and we don't really have an answer as to why they need overflow. I mean, it's already been approved for what they have submitted.
Okay, well, it's up to the Plan Commission. I'm just offering that since they are meeting the parking code with the on-site parking, that any additional parking is separate and they could come back for, but
That
it's up to the Plan
essentially,
Commission.
yeah.
I
that
hope I
is-
didn't confuse everybody further by pointing that out, but
Oh,
Yeah,
I will second that motion you made, Rob.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to table this until we hear back from Tim with a plan in writing for the overflow parking.
And I'd also say the screening and landscaping.
And right, and the screening and landscaping, exactly. Thank you, Nate. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 2, discussion regarding and review of the site plan, floor plans, and building elevation drawings the parking plan, the landscaping plan, and the utilities, grading, and drainage plans that were submitted by Richard and Jeannie Hoffman for the 11-unit motel rental unit they would like to construct on parcel number 181000631218444P, which is located on Chalet Lane. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Note for commission members, this agenda item starts on page 35 in the packet, and I will turn it over to Amy as it starts with her review and assessment.
Again, this is a request for an 11-unit motel rental facility on Chalet Lane in the B1 General Business District. The applicant has requested a review of the site plan, floor plans, building elevations, parking plan, landscape plan, and utility grading and drainage plans. Preliminary approval was granted at the last Plan Commission meeting, or the January 25th Plan Commission meeting. For the floor plans, building elevation drawings, and related site plan is submitted. Detailed plans with revised setbacks were requested. And so that's why the applicant is back before you this evening with these revised plans. I have talked with the applicant several times over the past week. There have been several revisions to these plans to meet the setbacks, to make sure the plans are consistent so they match up. Driveway locations, parking locations. One plan showed parking on the west of the building. It will be on the east of the building. So now the plans you have in front of you are consistent. So following under section 66-320 B1 General Business District, the setbacks, as you can see in the staff report, are listed. The applicant's plans do reflect these setbacks. So they are met. Let's see, they are proposing 69% green space, so they're exceeding the requirement there. Continuing on with the staff report. Recommendation, there are quite a few recommendations. Approval for this project subject to the following 12 conditions, including double windows to be installed on all 4 sides of the building. Again, that was, there was some inconsistency with the plan, and there was an email that's submitted in the packet noting windows. So I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. It's on all 4 sides of the building, meeting all of the district requirements, including setbacks, which these plans do meet. The landscape plan. So I just referenced, just for the Plan Commission's understanding, just referenced all the sections that apply to a development like this. So it just becomes part of the record that yes, in fact, the applicant does have to meet the landscape section. The dumpster shall, not encroach into any building setbacks. It shall be screened according to that section in the zoning code. So just kind of spelling that all out so the applicant understands all the sections that they have to meet and follow as well. A development agreement shall be executed by the village. That's a requirement in the code. That'll be their next step at the Plan Commission. And that's basically it. Any other permits that are required from the village, that would be one of the conditions as well. Taking a look at the plans that were submitted, again, the property located here. If you take a look at the location map on the screen, north of 42, this vacant lot here. See if there's anything. I'm going to get to the revised site plan. Again, showing that parking on the east side of the building, a landscape berm, the drive, the buffer. There is a buffer requirement because this is adjacent to a residentially zoned parcel. So there's the additional 20-foot buffer in addition to that side setback that's required. And then the setbacks differ a bit because it's adjacent to a residential district. That more intense zoning district requirements will apply in this case, and that's spelled out in the staff report as well. The grading plan that was submitted, and that'll be reviewed by engineering. Let's see. The floor plan, the units. Let me get the. And the elevations submitted. I think that concludes my report on this one. Let's get to that rendering here. I don't know if the applicant is on the Zoom, but I believe he was planning to attend. So I'm not sure if he has anything to add to that, but that concludes my report.
Richard,
Yes.
would you like, is there anything you would like to address to commission members now, or should we see if anyone has questions for you first? Do you?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I think Amy covered everything. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Sure.
It wasn't clear to me on the plan if your access road is going to meet the requirements of the fire department.
Great. Yes. Chris and I walked the property Mr. Hecht and I walked the property last week. And yes, he said 18 feet would be wonderful. We actually had gone up to 22 because we had heard from someone that was required. 18, he said, would be sufficient. And he felt there's a fire hydrant already at the corner of the property. So everything seemed to be fine with him.
And it will be paved.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then the second question, in your email to Amy, you mentioned the windows and the colors. Does this rendering represent the final colors or not?
The rendering does not. However, in the color, which it's minimized on my screen right now, but the correct colors are stated and on record with this drawing. And again, as I believe I mentioned, they were used in the condos at Schoolhouse Hill. The furthest south two unit condo building, it would be those same colors. It's a darker brown than what's shown on the rendering.
Are these suites? And if so, what does the suite consist of?
Certainly. Yes, they are suites. There are two separate bedrooms, one with two queen beds, one with one king bed. There are two bathrooms, one with a two-person whirlpool and a walk-in shower, the other with just a tub and shower. There is a living area with a gas fireplace, a full kitchen, and then a dining area off the kitchen. And an outdoor patio area or porch area.
And then how many parking spaces?
17. And the requirement, I believe, is 12. So we have some extra because they are 2-bedroom units.
And there are 11 units, correct?
Correct, yes.
And 12 parking spaces.
No. The requirement was 12. However,
Well,
we
and-
have 17. 17.
Which brings up a question that I'll interject since we're on the topic now. And if you as can be noted in Amy's review, she mentioned, even though this is a proposed motel under section 660403 J2E, the proposed floor plan for this development fits the parking description of a condominium hotel over a traditional motel with only one room or suite per unit. In the condominium hotel scenario, 1.5 spaces per 2-bedroom unit would require a total of 17 spaces for this proposed development. Now, my question is this. That we know we're not dealing with a condo hotel. We know we're not dealing with, there's going to be an association in their condos. We know that, and we also know that we've reworked our code related to parking and motel hotel. So what to me is out there for consideration and what applies is that the true definition of hotel motel after we reworked our code is that there's one space for every bedroom. And if there's 11 rooms,
That's 22.
that would be 22 spaces, but then there's also the issue of that's then, you know, the issue of spaces for employees would be in addition to that. So that is an open question from my standpoint. And just to complete my questions, the other question that I have that I would mention at this time is, and I believe Plan Commission members will recall this from conversation the last time this proposal was before us. When we looked at the initial Bayland rendering, which looking in our packet tonight between 36 and 37 is where it was in the hard copy the office provided me. It appears to me I'm looking at the same I'm looking at a similar, perhaps a revised or the same Bayland builders rendering of the proposal. And I still see in that rendering the front desk area not where you walk into the building. It in essence looks to be where in a building design of this type, the front desk looks like it's where one would expect a laundry room to be. And I do recall, and I would ask on my fellow committee members if they recall as well, when this came up the first time to us, I recalled Denise starting the discussion about the fact that, you know, there has to be a front desk and it has to be staffed, but it also should not be in the basement. So if I'm not reading, if I'm not interpreting this Bayland drawing in the packet correctly, Richard, let me know or point it out to us so we can see. But from what I'm looking at in the packet, it looks like that front desk area is still not where you walk into the building.
You are correct. It's on the lower level or the ground level versus the first floor.
Okay.
Since it's on an elevator, a sloped lot, we have a ground level and then the first floor where you walk into. So you are correct, Rob. I don't recall the conversation with Denise. Maybe that was something that you had at a board meeting or something, or I'm not sure, but I don't recall that.
I mean, I thought it came up when this came to us the first time, but the question is if a development like this needs to have a staffed front desk, how effective is that if guests are going to be walking into the establishment and they're not walking by it or not walking into it? That it's, how are they going to find their way to it? And how is the front desk staffed if, particularly at check-in time or check-out time, that,
Sure.
in and out
Rob, what I'll tell you is, I mean, we've had the Coach Light next door for 13 seasons, the Ridges for 12 seasons, and, signage is the way they find out where the front desk area is. We don't have, especially with exterior entrance doors, rooms, I should say, at both of those inns, the front desk is not where they would walk past. They only get to the lobby area to check in and to check out based on signage, which is the same thing we would do at this property.
Okay.
Except that we're dealing with this property. And it just seems to me that check-in at a front desk should be at a front desk. And while we were talking, Rob, I looked up the definition of front. And front means the area seen first. So a front desk seems to me should be in an area that is seen first by the guests.
Is there a code? I'm just curious because I've never dealt with this before. But is there a code or anything that states this? Or is this just a wish? Or I guess I'm trying to feel you out where we're going with this.
I can offer something. The zoning code does not have a definition or a requirement for where the front desk is located. The only thing that I could find is just in the definition of the motel hotel,
Okay,
and it indicates the minimum of the 10 units and a front desk. And so when I Googled front desk today, front desk from the Oxford Dictionary, and that's what popped up when I searched, just said the main desk. So, I don't see anything in the zoning code that requires a particular location in the building. I mean, and this is just purely from a zoning perspective. That's all I can offer on that.
Yeah, and I understand, Richard, your point about the historical reference of Coach Light, et cetera, but quite frankly, when those entities like that started decades ago, things were a lot different in terms of expectation, et cetera, and customer expectation. But Amy, do you have any reference to make or point to make regarding the reworking of the code and the parking spaces?
As far as any text amendments to the code for parking, sure, it would be helpful if the code could be revised to clarify. The market has changed. The market changes over time, and zoning codes sometimes are the last to be changed to go along with the market. And with these new type of rental facilities, it would be helpful to have some clarification in the zoning code to better match what actually we're seeing in the market for these types of developments.
So I interpreted your report correct to say that you were essentially basing the 17 spaces off of the condominium hotel motel designation?
Yes, and just the parking definition, not the definition of, for a use in this case. I'm just looking at what was available to me with your parking section of your zoning code. And that is the definition that most closely matches this proposal, and 17 spaces, which is what's proposed, would also be the number under that parking definition. Because it specifically describes, multiple bedrooms in a unit.
And then
very different than a typical motel that is just, the very traditional one room. You open up one door and you have one space. This is different than that.
So then in that definition you're referencing, which got to the 17 spaces for guests, was there any declaration of number of spaces for employees?
No, it's not required in that particular parking definition.
Okay, and then in terms of the true definition in the rewritten code of a hotel motel and one parking space per bedroom, that's not clear enough at this point, or are you familiar with my perception of that, or is that something?
I mean, my recommendation is that it meets the code requirements based on what we have in front of us in the existing zoning code. But, this is something that, the Plan Commission can agree or disagree with that interpretation.
Okay.
But I think it's awfully tricky to go beyond what's available in the zoning code. And not have, a justification for requesting more or less parking by the Plan Commission.
And then Richard, did you have any ideas, or did I not come upon it in the packet materials as to parking for employees, or was your thinking just that within those 17 spaces, employees would also park there?
Yeah, at the most, we would have one employee working at a time. The other employee, one person on the desk, I should say, and the other employees are staffed and have housing right behind the property, so they would just be walking to work.
Okay.
They're basically on site. Yeah.
The applicant described what he expected to be, who would come to this hotel, who would rent these units. Maybe if you could describe that a little bit,
Yeah,
families,
absolutely.
just based on your experience, parking needs in other locations, perhaps.
Yes, certainly. Based on our other two properties, 2 bedrooms and 3 bedroom units, I would say less than 20% drive separately for each of those units. Typically they're families, so parents in one room and children in the other. Sometimes there are, 2 couples, which many times they travel together as well. Each couple using one of the 2 bedrooms. But I would say it's less than, and I did some research at both properties, and it's somewhere less than 20% actually drive separately and would have 2 vehicles. And we do have several 2, and like I said, we only have 1 3-bedroom unit, but we have several 2-bedroom units at the properties.
Okay. Any other questions from commission members? And does anyone have a motion that they would like the committee to entertain at this time? And as far as Amy's recommendation and the various points she notes on page 36 of our packet, that this would be, we would be approving subject to, as far as what is expected, would we want to consider a motion granting preliminary approval based on the noted 12 items being adhered to?
Rob, I'd like to make a motion that we approve as presented.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to approve as presented.
Second,
Second from Ron. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. And thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
So
Right.
now, Amy, just so that I've got this correct, so none of those conditions would be imposed then, right? If it's approved as presented?
Yes, though most of these items will still have to be addressed through the process to get to construction. Any building permits that are necessary, engineering review of the grading plan, stormwater, the development agreement that the Plan Commission will need to review and approve based on the zoning code requirement. And yes, so all of those.
Okay, so Nate, do you want that included in your motion, or do you just want it as presented?
As
Well,
presented.
As presented includes the approval is subject to the 12 items Amy listed.
Okay,
Okay. Item number 3, discussion regarding a request for architectural review that was submitted by representatives of Drury Design on behalf of Britt Unkefer for the Wild Tomato, which establishment is located at 10677 North Bayshore Drive. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. We have information in our packet starting on page 53 on this agenda item, beginning with Amy's recommendation. And Amy, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Let me just get this shared. Wild tomato. Yes. Okay, let me find my sheet. Again, this is a request for architectural review. Yeah, it's the wild tomato. on North Bay Shore Drive to add a glass garage door on the southeast elevation of the existing building. The existing stone is to be removed and the existing swinging door to be relocated to the side of the building, window added. The existing privacy fence is proposed to be moved back 8 feet to add space for the new walk-up pizza window. New plantings and the added walkway that's mentioned in the staff report has now been removed. There was an updated site plan submitted, and Janelle, I'm not sure. It came pretty late on Friday, so I'm not sure if it made it to this packet, but I have it and can share it if I need to after I'm finished with this presentation. They just updated the plan to take away the sidewalk because they couldn't meet the side setback for it. So staff recommendation is approval, subject to providing the window glazing to be used for the garage door. And the point of that is just to see what will that glass look like from the street. You know, depending on the type of window glass, there can be a huge glare, it could be clear glass. It could be a type of glazing where, you know, it looks foggy, like you really can't see through. So I was just trying to get at what will that look like from the street. And then the second, applicant shall submit the plan survey showing the property lines, which they have done that. In that, I'll show that plan in a minute, and then all required building permits. And it looks like the applicant has already applied for a building permit on this project, and a permit was issued. So let's see. Again, the location of the wild tomato, everyone knows. This shows the proposed garage door. And there are some changes to the interior floor plan as well. Looks like a change to the bar area. And then again, the door and the window as I described. It's a view of the existing building. And then I think I found, okay, this shows the new window and the door. And then this is just a Google Street View showing that same space, but pulled back a little bit so you could see the full building. And then I'm gonna find that, I'll leave this up, but I'm gonna find that revised site plan showing the property line so we can talk about that sidewalk.
Is that page 56 in the packet, Amy, or is that something else?
It
that I
could
should-
be, I don't know, Janelle, did you
I sent
post
it out
that?
today,
Okay,
so you guys should have an email from me that it was attached to.
Okay, yeah, I don't have that. I have what was in the packet, so we need to, if there was something that changes page 56 of the packet, then we
Katie,
need.
would
to
it be possible for you to share that? It's in the
Yes.
share drive.
yes, I will find that from the email. Just bear with me for a minute while I search. I'm gonna stop sharing. I thought I had dropped it in my file, but it must still be in my email so I can find it. That came from,
Amy, do you want me to put it up on the screen?
if you have it available,
Sure.
so we don't waste as much time with me searching. Thank you very much.
I just have to see where I stuck it. Does everyone see it there?
Yep.
Perfect.
What I see is nothing similar to the rendering by Pat Drury on page 56 in the packet.
Just the
So
parcel with the property
we-
lines.
could we, is there a way that we could bring up page 56 of the packet? And then I can ask a couple questions from there, and then we can go back to this drawing if indeed people feel that what we just saw would answer those questions, because I don't see the answers to my questions in what was just up there either. Heidi, is there a way we could get page 56 of the packet on the
Yep,
screen?
I'm just scrolling down to that page real quickly here and then I'll get it
Thank
up
you.
there.
Thank you very much.
I guess that's about as big as I'm gonna be able to
That's
make.
gonna be, that's fine. That's fine. So my questions are when I look at the old drawing and then look at the new drawing. What I don't see lot lines. I don't see lot lines in relation to 42 Main Street. I don't see lot lines in relation to the driveway area leading to Waterfront Park. I don't see the I don't see where the fence is going to go on here in relation to, for instance, the bathrooms that are there. I also don't see in this drawing how the pervious surface requirement of 6 feet off of the lot line would be met with the sidewalk. And in general, what makes it difficult for me at this time to get a handle on this is without seeing all that stuff represented in a rendering, then how are we to know where is this sidewalk going to be poured in relation to those bathrooms? Is this sidewalk going to essentially end right at where the exterior wall of the bathrooms exists?
No.
What, it's, what about drainage? What about rainwater drainage? What about, we're gonna put a flat sidewalk in there and then water might stand on it? So those are my questions. And if what we saw before, if somebody can point out to me what, answers to my questions on this drawing or the other slide that we saw just before it, I'm all ears and eyes.
The applicant on Friday submitted the drawing that was previously on the screen to show the property lines, and they have indicated that they no longer plan to install a sidewalk. So they revised this plan that you see now. They removed that sidewalk adjacent to that property line because they can't meet the 6 feet, because in the code for the B3 downtown business district, the 6 foot side setback can only be green space. So I think the sidewalk was proposed to be only 12 inches from the property line. So given that, and the Plan Commission, that would be a matter to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a variance to that setback, and they'd have to prove a hardship. They decided just to remove the sidewalk from the plan.
So there'll be grass there as a path to the
Yes.
window for.
Yes, and some landscaping. That's a very good question. If the applicant's on, I imagine they still plan to add some landscaping as they initially submitted in their plans.
That's correct. There would be landscaping
Okay,
and
thank
grass.
you.
And then
So-
is there still a fence?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but it's pushed back to essentially the corner of, it would match the restroom building. That's how far back it would go. For
You mean
restroom.
it would kind of run right
It says 8
alongside of
feet
it?
on the plan. It says 8 feet on the plan. So just for your reference in envisioning that basically would be hidden now, that fence would behind the building.
It looks like on this drawing, it's depicted with the blue line and the lighter blue line where it's going to be removed.
And it also says that it's 8 feet.
So so the pizza pickup is gonna go from the back?
No, it's the use of the word pizza window is completely inaccurate.
Okay, well, that was on your plan, so that's why.
We're
That
using-
was, so,
So it's just a window, or it's not
correct.
gonna be for a pickup service or anything like that? Okay.
It could be to get a drink, but it's not
Oh.
gonna be like our carry out. I
Okay.
guess, so,
So carry out's gonna still be on Post Office Lane.
correct. Yeah, this is nothing like that. This, you could get a drink there, that's about it.
So,
What-
so people could be walking from either the post office lane area or waterfront park around the bathrooms, or they could be walking from the sidewalk by the front of Wild Tomato down this pathway. And then essentially there would be grass and landscaping separating the exterior of the bathrooms from that side of the Wild Tomato building.
Yes,
And then is that area then, that grassy and landscape pathway, is that completely canopied with some sort of a gutter overhang, or is that exposure to the elements?
there's already gutters existing.
And an overhang on that area, Brett?
I'm not sure, there is, I don't know how, it's at least 2 feet.
So it's
I'm-
possible then that you could have rain or coming down on that area that people would be traversing from either the waterfront park or from the sidewalk.
I guess I don't understand the point of the question, or the question.
Well, I guess I'm just,
I mean,
what
we
I'm-
have patios
what-
without
you know,
any
I
of
could
the,
kind of, when it started out saying it was going to be a sidewalk, I could envision, okay, if you put a sidewalk in and you drain it effectively and make sure there's drains in there, then you would have a side entrance to a commercial establishment that was set up to not let rainwater coming down from the open air above it to create standing water that people would be walking through. And if you're having a grassy landscape area with only a couple feet of this 8-foot space with some sort of guttered roof overhang that leaves around 6 feet of open air space throughout the length of that pathway that will be absorbing water if there's rain. And, you know, how do we know that the rainwater is not going to stand in there? How do we know that, you know, people would,
because it's grass, and grass actually eventually absorbs water. That would be the definition of pervious. And if it's raining, my patios generally, and this won't be open,
okay, that's,
so,
thank you.
yep.
Commission members, any other questions?
I'm good.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve as revised with this revision that came in at 2:00 today.
Second,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 4. Discussion regarding and review of the development agreement that pertains to the remodeling addition project at the Northern Door Child Care Center, which facility is located on parcel number 1810008312824B and has been assigned an address of 10520 Judith Blazer Drive. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Beginning on page 64 in our packet. Do we have any questions on the development agreement? And Amy, if you would like to give us
I
your
don't-
summary too, please.
Sure. I don't have any comments on this one because I wasn't involved in reviewing projects when this was reviewed by the Plan Commission. So I have not reviewed this development agreement or wasn't given this development agreement to review. So I put together a cover sheet for it, but I have not reviewed it. So I don't have any comments on it.
Okay. I recall us being comfortable with things and just waiting on the agreement at our last meeting. Any comments from commission members?
Just a quick question on page 66. What's that yellow blob on the other side of 57?
Yeah, I had that question too, Dave.
Are they doing a land grab?
I believe that's the, isn't that part of the, isn't that part of where the work's going on for the medical center?
No, that's way
That's
out.
Scandinavian, the
Yeah.
Scandinavian Lodge, I think.
Sometimes when you go on the county's website, that will happen. It's happened a few times to me before, and I don't know why that happens. And they
Right.
can't tell me why at the county either.
Okay, so we should
Let
just,
me just fill you in on what's going on here. When you're searching by parcel address and you don't actually specify the parcel itself, it's showing every parcel that's 10520. So if you were to go for Judith Blazer, you'd go to click on that parcel. And then you'd grab the parcel ID that has got that ends in 24B, grab that and then search by parcel number. Then you could go in there, grab it, and it would just show there. So that portion across the road is just how you selected it. It just happened to include that as well.
Okay.
I would just say, make sure when you're doing it to be as precise as possible, make sure you do it by parcel ID.
okay, so we should just have Janelle fill in the agreement?
It's actually all done.
The date is not,
Oh,
Or-
yeah. We have to fill in a few spots. Most of it is in there. I had talked with Cindy Trinkner Piat, and she believed that the development could be completed by December 31st. Is that okay with you guys?
That's fabulous.
Yeah,
Okay.
that can be done.
Okay, then the only other thing that has to be filled in is the date of the agreement, which would be whenever the board approves it.
okay,
That would be May 17th.
If we approve it, Rob.
Well, yeah, that's why I said would be.
Rob, just so that you know, Cindy is on. Did you have any questions, Cindy?
No, but I did read all 32 pages. Thank you, Janelle.
You're
Captivate,
serving us
every
as
one of those
appreciated.
pages captivated in reading. I know, Cindy.
Captivating, yes.
Ah,
I would move that we accept this agreement and forward it to the village board.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
I
Opposed? Motion carried. We'll look forward to passing that along on May 17th, Cindy.
Thank you very much.
And then we'll want to note that Janelle is an agenda item
Okay,
for the May 17th meeting.
okay.
Okay. Item number 5, discussion regarding potential revisions to the village's noise regulations. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. Dave, would you like to lead us off on discussion?
Sure. So I'm not sure everybody is clear that currently noise is addressed in the code in 2 different spots. For the B3 district, there is a short paragraph that states that it can't be over 85, but there is no time limit. So you could play all night if you wanted to. In the other districts, the code has got a whole bunch of words about what noise is, what constitutes noise, and you cannot play it after 10 o'clock, but there's no specific decibel limit. In looking at this and with the way the city or the village has evolved over the last couple of years, I was thinking it's a time for us to revise or take a look at these provisions as we have with some other items that have been going on. So if you think about it, when you go back to when Husby's, who was the first to bring live music into the village, back then there was the Village Inn and Sister Bay Yacht Club was the only what you would call residential or accommodations in the village. We now have Marina View, we have Mill Road Place, Goose and Twigs, the Door Hotel. There will be the Northern Door Properties, which is that building that's going up behind Skipstone. We now have a larger concentration of accommodations where people are not only coming into the city to have something to eat and have something to drink, but they're also going to be there overnight. In addition to that, we still have this unique situation where South Spring Road is abutted right along the back of it. And the majority of those properties are not rentals. They are either full-time residents or part-time residents. So that was the first thing that made me start thinking about the nature of why the noise should maybe be addressed. The second time is if you think about it now, particularly last year as we exited COVID, it used to be we would have live music every once in a while on the weekend. Last year, from May through October, every weekend there was at least one or two venues that had music going on. And there were many nights, even during the week, that there was music going on, sometimes as early as noon. And part of what brought this up was, as those units were playing with the current allowed venue, dB levels, you couldn't really be in the Marina District without having to take part in the music. Now, I'm not against music. My son is a musician. I love music. But because of the way the city is now configured, with Marina View going in and with Skull going in, and as I think everybody knows, noise bounces around in the city or in the village quite a bit. So you can be way over by the marina and you can still hear the music from the Skull if they're playing to the 85 dB limit, which is quite large, by the way. The third reason that made me think about this, which has been partially addressed with the new short-term rentals, is as we have rentals outside of the B3 district, there really was no good solid noise requirement in those areas. Now, based on the new requirement that short-term rentals are now being held to a noise standard, I still think it would be appropriate in that district that we would put an actual dB limit on people that are not doing short-term rentals. One of the things I did is I did some research about what's going on around the area. Milwaukee has a 60 decibel limit. Green Bay's got 80. Eau Claire has what's called the nuisance. Bailey Harbor has nuisance. Egg Harbor 79, Sturgeon Bay 90, Fish Creek 70. All of those communities do have a 10 o'clock hard limit in addition to whatever they've said. I also noted that the city of Vancouver, which I think is a great example of a city that has embraced tourism. It's a very walkable city. It's a beautiful area to be. They've actually set a 70 limit across their entire area. So what I'm recommending that we consider is that in the B3 district, we go from 85, which, by the way, if you really think about, if you play a sound meter to 85, that's very loud music. I suggest that in the B3, we go all the way back down to 70. And part of the reason is that based on what other communities are doing. And again, what I think is appropriate because of how the sound is now bouncing around. You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of or what I call hardscaping in the village now. So anybody that makes any sort of music, even at the 70 level, it's going to bounce around. What I would like to have happen, and I think it would be appropriate for our visitors, is that you can dip into these 3 or 4 venues that have live music and enjoy their music, but then walk down the street and not have to continue to enjoy it if you're going to someplace else. So I'm suggesting that we think about 70 for B3 and again, and of course, put in a hard limit of 10 o'clock at night. I think in the other districts, I think you should consider 70 also. They already have the 10 o'clock limit. And of course, for Oktoberfest or for Fall Fest and maybe Freedom Fest, clearly we would maybe have to have a variance for those nights. So, you know, I guess what I'm hoping for is that we can say that we can still be the place in the door where we can have live music, which is wonderful, but we should be able to have the businesses have their music stay within a reasonable area around their actual establishment.
Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Dave.
How does that affect the concerts in the park?
The one thing I was unable to get because I never got a straight answer is I don't know what the situation is with them. What are they playing at and what their agreement with the yacht club was. So I will admit that was the one piece of information I never was able to get my hands on.
Well, there was never an agreement. There was a lawsuit for many, many years that then ultimately was withdrawn by the yacht club, but withdrawn in a manner that should a future yacht club board want to reinstitute the same lawsuit, they could do so.
Do you know?
There was a,
I'm sorry.
I guess the best way I could phrase it is there was an acquiescence of sorts that led to, I believe at the village's direction, I was done with my term as trustee at that time. That led to Louise spearheading the monitoring of decibel levels on the band shell one year. I don't know. And then as far as the year after that was COVID and there were no, there was nothing going on. So I don't know that there's anything that applies other than, what's in the code now.
Right. So,
But remember, those concerts always are supposed to end at 9.
Right.
So that makes a difference too, because they're over earlier.
Right.
I think if you look at what some of the other cities have done, particularly if you have hardscaping in the area, and if you actually, I did a bunch of stuff because there was actually a wedding I was planning for a while, then COVID came. You can talk to a lot of different people about what an appropriate, if you talk to a DJ, they will tell you the louder the better, because they want to be able to be heard over the other people. However, the DJs aren't thinking about the people that are 30 feet off the lot line who are hearing that. So based on what I've been able to see, and again, what really impressed me, because I used to work in downtown Milwaukee, they went all the way to 60. But if you think about it, in fact, I was at MSOE at the time. We actually, for those of you not familiar, there was a big Groman tower there that the honor students were able to rent out. They had a phenomena there where people on the second floor could not hear the music, but they could on the 10th floor because of the way the sound was bouncing around inside the city there, because you got larger buildings. So I think we'll find that, and if you think about it too, 2 of the 3 venues that we have in town that have music consistently, they really have a very small footprint. So
Right.
70 dB really will, everybody there can see it. And in the Skull, the Stubber, even though they have a larger footprint, they have got 3 sides of hardscaping. And then I'm not sure that AstroTurf takes out any of the sound at all. If anything, just bounces.
It does. I don't think it does.
And the other thing that, now, I will admit to you, there is one thing that we do need to think about is we need to, as we do with all of the other zoning things and what we've had for the last couple of years, we have not had consistent enforcement of zoning regulations. We talked about parking last week. This would be something that we would have to have some way of saying, if somebody does feel that one of the establishments has gone over the top, we're going to have to address, is there some way that we can have enforcement? Last year, before Bo left, as I was beginning to do my research, he did a couple of times go out with a sound meter. And he did have to warn one of the establishments. But then he left midsummer before anything really took off. So we do have the proper equipment in town. There's actually handheld devices that are reasonable. Again, we want to be someplace that's let the businesses have their stuff, but let's have other people not have to enjoy or be able to have their own business.
So I guess I have some concerns about dropping it down all the way to 70. And I also have some, I think my biggest concern is one of your concerns as well, David, is enforcement, because who is going to enforce this? The sheriff's department will not enforce it. Many years ago, I was the person who was being complained upon in my youthful days. And that consisted of me having a conversation on my back porch, in the house between you and I, Rob, and they would come and talk to you, but they wouldn't actually do anything. So if we have this and we don't enforce it, I think that is far worse than not having it at all. And that's been a real issue on there. I also think that the key to measuring it is going to have it be at the lot line, which is what it had been at the band shell. And I also would like to get some data on what that actually is, because there are so many other variables that come into play. And this is something that the board had heard about quite a bit over the years. The wind can have a huge impact on how far that sound travels and a lot of other things. So I think that to have data on it, instead of get the data, set the level after that. I do understand that we need to have somebody go out there and police this to a certain extent, but the most effective that we've ever had, effective enforcement the village has ever had, is having an administrator go out there with a sound meter saying, hey, you're a little loud here, come look at this. And they say, okay, we see it's a little loud.
And I would add, Dave, that your reference to Vancouver, to me, having spent at least 1 week and a month in Vancouver for several years in a while back in time, in the time period that drove them to enact what you referred to, it's a direct correlation to Fish Creek. If you took Fish Creek as it's designed and made it 10 times larger, and instead of just a couple venues with music, add about 12 more into all those, in the middle of all those shops, etc. I think, that it's not a surprise to me that Fish Creek has the lowest on record up here. I think Nate's points are valid. I think, what we should consider is the type of studies that we would be doing and at which points that we would be doing them during the year, and whether or not we want to consider bringing in a sound technician firm to do that study for us, similar to the village essentially had a sound technician come in when the lawsuit was going on with Yacht Club. They had their own independent sound people doing measurements. And I don't know, Nate might recall, or Janelle, I don't recall how it came to be that SBAA, maybe because they were the ones sponsoring the concerts, they took charge of, being involved in that monitoring at the lot line of the decibel levels. But I think if we, what we need to consider is if we're going to seriously consider revising the code and the ordinances, then we need to seriously consider an analysis that would drive us some results, to fortify or substantiate numbers that get talked about in terms of where decibels are at and where they go. And I think, in my opinion, what supports us, presenting you know, by a majority to the board for consideration would be undertaking an analysis like that, because without some, you know, some tangible data, it's difficult to say, let's lower decibel levels all over the place without enforcement, plus let's lower the time, you know, let's lower the hours. And I'm not saying I'm opposed to either one. I'm just saying, you know, if we're going to ask or consider that we're lowering decibels across the board and lowering how long and or how early in the day music could start and end, we should have some information from a sound technician.
I think there's a couple different ways we could do it here, and I'm actually just did a quick Google search on here. It looks like there is actually something that is advertised as protect your Airbnb. So you can, you know, enhance your guest experience. I'm not sure if that's to make sure your guests are quiet or not, but if we had something that we had out there to get data, and maybe it's worth consulting with a sound engineer, but I'm saying it might be as simple as talking to a sound engineer and then installing some of these devices.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it.
Okay.
Do you want, I guess another thing, is there anybody else on the board that has any, do you think has merit that we go forward to do this? Anybody have objections?
I respect the question, but I think really, you know, I think it's only right that if a plan commission member raises an issue that is worthy of, holds merit and is worthy of discussion by the plan commission, that, you know, how the board feels about it should not impact whether a majority vote of the plan commission forwards a motion, you know, to the board.
I understand. So I will do some research and see if these meters are what we could come up with. I actually like that. I will say forget that. Let me see what I can come up with in terms of remote meters or something like the weather stations or something like that.
Yeah, and if they could be put up in various places at the lot line and, you know, keyed to record at certain times, yeah, let's look into that. That sounds great, Dave.
All right.
So we've got consensus that you'll take the lead on that, and we'll look forward to hearing where it goes in the future here.
Sure. Yeah. For right now, Janelle put me on the agenda for next time, and I'll just work to that. Thank you.
Okay.
May I
Okay.
just ask a question about this?
Absolutely, Amy.
Does the village receive a lot of complaints on an ongoing basis about noise?
Yes.
Yes. So this has been, I'm just curious on background, kind of where this came
Typically,
from, if it's.
We get a lot of them, then we don't get money, then we get a lot of them, then we don't get
No.
many.
Okay.
And you know what? It's part of it has to do with the bartender in charge that night and the band. There are some bands that just want to play loud, and if the bartender isn't paying attention, it gets crazy.
Sure. No, I understand. Yeah.
We've been hearing complaints about noise in the village for 20 years, right, Ron?
More than that.
Okay, dear.
Okay.
Fair enough. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, item number 6, consider a motion to convene into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.851G to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. Sub-bullets, a report on the status of an issue that was addressed by the village board in closed session concerning one of the lots in the Stony Ridge development, discussion regarding legal matters, and discussion regarding village properties. This will be a closed session for commission members, and Amy will need to go into our own breakout room for that. And at 6:49 PM, I will motion that we go into that closed session.
Second.
Roll call, Zashki, yes.
Al, yes.
Gretzbacher, yes.
Kane, yes.
Yes.
Did we get a Schmitz in there too?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, excellent. at 6:50 PM. We are now moving to closed session. I will motion that we return to open session.
Don't worry about me. I don't need all this. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. I don't.
Do we have a second to return to open?
Second,
Okay, roll call. Zashki, yes.
Well, yes.
Kane, yes.
Yes.
Okay, and we got a cappella finally from Ron and Marge. That's good. So we're back in open session at 7:30. All right. All right, we have no motions to take action on coming out of closed, so we will move to agenda item 9. A discussion regarding and a review of the site plan and parking plan, the grading and erosion control plans, the utility plan, and the landscaping plan that have been submitted by Paula Anschutz for the property that has been assigned an address of 2387 Ava Hope Court and a parcel number of 181510008, as well as related impervious surface green space calculations, photos of the building she would like to move on to that property, and building material and color samples. Consider a motion for action if appropriate. I will turn this over to Amy Bennett, our interim planning and zoning administrator.
Thank you. I just shared the staff report. Again, this is an application for Paula Anschutz for the review of the site parking plan, grading and erosion control, utility and landscaping plan to relocate the multifamily building, the multifamily 4-unit building at 2387 Ava Hope Court. If you take a look at the screen, the property located here highlighted south of Ava Hope Court. It is zoned R2. It's adjacent to an R1 single family parcel to the south here at 10444. I'm going back to that staff report. I highlighted several of the sections that apply from the zoning code, including the minimum requirements for the R2 district. The proposal meets most of the setbacks, but because of that R1 lot to the south and the more restrictive standards, the rear setback is 40 feet. I believe the applicant is proposing 30 feet with this proposed site plan. In the minimum green space is 60% required and just under at 55% is proposed. The side setbacks are met and the front is met aside from the fact that the existing deck will be installed with, the relocation of this building. That deck does encroach into that front setback. Decks should meet building setbacks, which would be the 60 from the center line in this case. So setback issues, the deck, the rear setback, and then the minimum green space. Parking requirements, the Plan Commission can grant a waiver to parking. The applicant is proposing 8 stalls based on the parking requirements for R2. It would be once, and again, based on the type of units, the parking would be required based on that with a minimum of 9 by 20. And then let's see, mention the decks. See what other plans I have to show. This is that proposed layout showing the proposed setbacks. These are the utility calcs. And I believe that concludes my report. Oh, I'll just go over the recommendation. Sorry about that. Recommendation. I'm recommending tabling the item to address the setbacks at the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then the following 8 conditions related to the review process and additional sections of the zoning code that will need to be addressed throughout the process, including a development agreement, any building permits, and any other required regulatory agency permits for this site. And that concludes my report.
Commission members, any comments, questions?
Does the setback variance or the setback encroachment on the back, is that also because of the deck or is it only in the front?
in the front.
Okay.
Let's pull up the site plan here.
There is a deck on
There
the
is
back.
a deck, yes. So the deck is 8 by 30. So yes, the deck does encroach into, we're still short 2 feet there if you remove the deck. But with the deck, yes, certainly that should meet the building setback as well, which would be 40 feet. And it appears there are 7 parking stalls. I think I mentioned 8, but I only see 7 here on the site plan that was submitted.
There should be 8. Huh.
And the parking area should meet the setback as well. It appears that maybe, okay.
Is there any magic we can do by putting in bike racks, since this would be potentially used by seasonal housing? If we put in bike racks, could we get a variance on a space or two?
You mean like we did for the Peach Barn?
Yep. I think, I might be going to the edge, but it's, I mean, one of the proposed uses is for them to work at any money, clearly plenty of businesses that they can get to by their feet or a bike.
So Dave, are you inferring that rather than the 8 parking spaces, there be a lesser number of parking spaces with the addition of bike racks in what would have been parking
Yes.
spaces?
Yes.
And is that when you say, could we work magic, is that a request of Paula's?
No, when I said magic, I remember the conversation that we had with Peach Barn, and both Nate and Denise dug into the code, and they are the parking gurus, and they figured out a way for us to, within our rights, so it's not magic, it's just they know how to do that.
Well, I would ask Paula. Paula, did you have any bike rack plans?
Yes, where that 8th spot would be, that says bike parking there. That's that very first spot.
Okay.
It's
Oh,
kind of hard
okay.
to read that, but
It's
Oh,
small,
here.
it looks like an IRE. Okay, I see. Okay.
but
All
I
right.
do think that could be moved towards the back of the parking area and another spot put there, but it would infringe on the setbacks. But when I went to the village board, that was something that I told them prior to moving the building, that this building is too large for this lot, that I would need a variance on setbacks.
Okay.
So regarding the bike parking, Paula, whether or not it would wind up being in that exact space being referred to, or if it would be at the other end of the parking area, you're essentially agreeing with the rendition on the drawing that you want the 8 spaces there, or there will be the 8 spaces, and then in that additional area, you'll be able to fit bike racks in.
Well, I guess.
Or
the
are you
bike
saying you need
parking-
more room for bike racks?
No, I think that area is fine. And I also think it could go towards the back of the parking lot.
Okay. Any further discussion from committee members? And if not, do we have a motion that someone would like us to entertain?
Hang on here, I'm trying to look for.
That's fine, Dave. That's fine.
I would be willing to, here we go. I would make a motion that we approve the plans based on the recommendations of our interim zoning administrator, with the exception of item 1. We cannot approve the setback variance. That is not within our purview.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, then, or a way to phrase that would be you're motioning that we approve the project as presented, as long as items 2 through 9 on the administrator's recommendations are carried out, and that item number 1 regarding the setbacks would proceed to the zoning board of appeals.
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Schmitz and a second from Kane. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Thank you, Paula. Moving on to
You.
item number 10, report from the village president on the action that was taken by the village board with respect to the recommendation from the Green Tier Legacy Community Committee, as well as the Plan Commission, that the interim administrator draft and present potential amendments to the village's raising permit requirements to the village trustees at their April 19th, 2022 meeting. The issue is still being worked by the interim administrator, and we, the board, will update Plan Commission at the appropriate future meeting. Item number 11, discussion regarding matters to be placed on a future agenda or referred to a committee, official, or employee. Janelle, do you have I believe we gave you, did we give you 1 item for certain earlier on in the evening, or 2?
I think there's 2, but let me check real quick. Okay, for sure. Agenda item number 1 was tabled. But that's for time,
Correct,
and that's going to be addressed at the next meeting.
correct. Item number 5 is going to be on the agenda, the noise, further discussion on the noise regulations.
Yep, that one as well.
Okay. Hearing nothing else.
Rob,
Yes,
as long as everybody's here, I have a question about the Stony Ridge plat
okay.
in itself. How did that, it's zoned R2. How did that get approved with all the lots being non-conforming?
I believe that happened before my time on the Plan Commission. I can't answer that question for you, Ron, unless
I mean,
one of our other
those
members
lots-
recalls the process.
yeah, those lots are supposed to be 20,000 square feet, and most of them are just over half.
I
Garrett had come
Or a
in.
planned use development.
yeah,
Those-
conditional, right?
Are they new lots or are they existing lots of record?
They're new lots.
Oh, okay.
They're on a plat, and Keith Garrett had come in and made a presentation to the Plan Commission way back and said that he wanted to have these smaller lots, so he had intended to build homes. And the plan commission approved it as reduced.
It's really reduced. Those are tiny homes. Yeah, I don't even know if you can do that, but yeah. I would question whether you can actually do that.
I think the best answer you could get, Ron, is if you want to call Zeke Jackson, he could explain to you how he massaged that through. And if you want to tell us what you heard, that'd be great too.
Well, someone did a lot of massaging.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If you want me to, Ron, I can look for the minutes.
No.
Okay.
We can include that under the refer to an official. We can have official staff follow up on that for you, Ron.
Yeah. Well, it would be interesting to find out why.
Yeah, okay. Janelle, if you can track that down, that'd be great.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. All right. At 7:46 PM, I will motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
No,
Thank you to all